going on? Hello there, my YouTubers in YouTube land. This is Oren, or the Sophomore Critic, or the Patreoner known as OK Journalist, and that's the most important one because I want you to follow me, and therefore I could potentially make a wee bit of money there, and that's the most important thing, is to make money off my art, and to maybe encourage you to make money off your art. Today I'm going to be talking about all the non-current films I watched this current year. If I can get to them all over the course of this 20-something mile stretch that I will be driving. Let us also mention that this will be done in a car, and I used to famously use Filmora editing software, and I made some awesome videos, and I guess maybe I could link to those, but those days are over. I don't have the bandwidth for that. I'm more focused on writing and trying to publish my articles and whatever else, and there is a lot that I am doing, but that's very hard. But I also find out that, like, whether I do that or whether I don't do that, I still get the same very low, paltry number of views anyway. So lastly, let's mention the motto of this channel is FTTSD. Follow the timestamps, dummy. Yes, it could be off-putting that I'm calling you guys dummies, but for real, you should not be dummies and be turned off by an hour-long YouTube channel, because the reality of it is that hour-long YouTube videos, not channels, yes, they are annoying. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you're making an hour-long YouTube video about, like, your predictions on the best actress race. Looking at you, awards contender, that channel. But I have done it better because I put timestamps, and if you put timestamps, that means you don't have to watch an hour. You have to just click on whichever films that I have awesome opinions on and just use that. So that's a really important thing to know. Okay, let's just start talking about, like, the awesome films that I have watched, or the non-awesome, because I'm going to try to talk about as many as I can before I arrive home. So let's start out with Streetcar Named Desire. It's on the film. It's on many lists of the greatest films ever made. And if you had lists of the greatest acting films ever, like the best displays of screen acting, this could be the number one. The performances of Marlon Brando. This was his coming out party. I don't know if it's this or On the Waterfront, but one of these two is his best on-screen performance ever. Most people would agree. You also had Vivian Leigh as either Stella or Blanche. Now it was a while since I saw this, and Kim Hunter. She was coincidentally, I believe, in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil in 1997. So I saw her like when she was still alive, and she is there too. So you have Kim Hunter, and you have Carl Malden, who was a great character actor. All three of these people won an Oscar, and Marlon Brando should have won, but they gave it to Humphrey Bogart that year, just as a sentimental vote. This is based on a Tennessee Williams play. Tennessee Williams wrote it in the Hotel Monteleone, which I have visited, and the house takes place on Elysium Fields. So this whole thing takes place in New Orleans. And when I was doing Hurricane Katrina relief, I used to bike by Elysium Fields Avenue every day. So it's this kind of this working class white neighborhood where this play is set. And it is a melodrama. It's not a drama, it's a melodrama. I mean, if it's a drama, these two couples living together would be able to work out their problems, but they don't. So, there's a lot of yelling. The sort of Stella, that with an exclamation mark, that comes from this thing, and it's been parodied quite a bit. It's a worthy story, and I will say that, every actor in this is definitely a big part. It's like a movie like Doubt, because it's a little bottle episode-ish. So yeah, it's definitely a worthy movie, especially if you're like, I want to see some great acting, or I want to see what Marlon Brando is all about. Speaking of, let's see what else. I saw so some films, they have signature scenes. I was thinking about this, like Tom Cruise, when he's dancing in his underwear in Risky Business. People remember that, but they don't remember that there was like probably an hour and at least 30 minutes more to the movie than that one number. The shelf life of that scene, that moment, is way bigger than the shelf life of the movie. And for better or worse, that is the case of the film The 7-Year Itch, which is known for Marilyn Monroe's dress being uplifted by a sewer crate, the wind of it. So, but there is a whole movie. It's not just that one little shot. The movie is by Billy Wilder, who is a favorite of mine and many people for a very prolific career that spanned some very dark dramas like Sunset Boulevard and The Lost Weekend, as well as so many comedies like Irma La Douche, The Apartment, Some Like It Hot, as well as just really great stylistic precedents like Double Indemnity, especially One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This film basically is about the 7-year itch is an idiom for when a husband gets the urge to maybe cheat on his wife after 7 years, and Marilyn Monroe plays the temptation. Marilyn Monroe is known for being a sex symbol, and it was intentional on her part. Was she the most beautiful person ever? Beauty is subjective, but also Rita Hayworth gets some credit for this too. But I mean, some people played especially in these old stereotypes, like Clara Barra was the vamp, or there were different or the flapper or whatever, or Mary Pickford was the sweetheart. People went into different actresses played different archetypes, and Marilyn Monroe was very skilled at playing sort of what maybe modern day parlance would call a manic pixie dream girl. She knew exactly how to work the camera and how to portray that sex appeal. And and some people would maybe label her as a ditz, but I think we know that in real life she was a very smart bookworm, but she in this movie she is kind of the temptation for this guy in New York City. And it's an interesting dynamic because we're also rooting for her, and we're rooting for him we're rooting for the original couple, not Marilyn Monroe, to stay together. Let's also see. I have also seen Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a derivative of the Harry Potter series. I also saw Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets this year after seeing the Team Star Kid version, which is just hilarious but absolutely true. And I think the Harry Potter's genius is that this is a series, and the feel of Harry Potter is that the magic can be just around the corner and that we can live amongst magic. Fantastic Beasts kind of takes some of this a step further, where this whole magic world can be found in someone's suitcase. I applaud. The film has this love story that between, say, Beauty and the Beast kind of thing, where there's a very attractive woman and a man who's more portly, and they pull off the romance there. It's also a period piece, which is very interesting for the Harry Potter world. It takes place in the Manhattan of maybe 100 years ago, which is really interesting. I think it had a little bit of dead space, but there's a lot that I did appreciate about it. Eddie Redmayne, who is an Oscar-winning actor, he had a certain nerdy charm, and I think it was also kind of nice that they didn't let the sexual tension, they didn't pair the spares as a term, where they didn't have the woman and the man, him and his love interest, just hook up because that's what everyone does. Speaking of 2016 films, because another 2016 film was Inferno, the third sequel to the third installment in the Da Vinci Code series by Ron Howard. You guys remember when Da Vinci Code came out in 2016, it was so hyped. Today, I would love to have seen Da Vinci Code succeed, because how other than Murder on the Orient Express, so little of our IP is based on literary sources. So few superheroes are people who use their brain. And this is another one. I don't understand. In contrast to Fantastic Beasts, I do not understand why they continue to keep the Langdon character, can't remember his first name is, but something Landon. The professor played by Tom Hanks, like completely asexual, but it's okay. But I mean, there's too much like, let's tie the storyline up into a kiss. But Felicity Jones and Ben Foster are, well, actually, I can't even tell you what they do. They play some very interesting characters. I don't want to spoil it. I think Da Vinci Code, basically, I think Angels and Demons and Inferno had a strong sense of pacing, and I think this one is no exception. But I think it's also aided with a self-assurance that this genre knows what it is. I think Ron Howard probably adjusted it to include a little more action and a little less pompousness, perhaps, when the Da Vinci Code reviews turned out negative. So in this one, you know, it's more action-oriented, which I just said that before. Sometimes you do that when you are reviewing films on the fly. What else did I see? Speaking of action films, I did see Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and I will die on the hill that this was a exceptional film. And I think if you didn't like this film, you have to start out by checking, is it possible to even like an Indiana Jones film that's new, or do I just want to preserve my favorite films in history and not have any attempts for any filmmakers to reinterpret them? Because if you were going to do Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford as a septuagenarian, this is probably about as good as it gets. And, you know, you have to... the film rotated or pivoted its action sequences to adjust to the fact that it would be unrealistic for Harrison Ford to knock out as many people as he could. And again, Harrison Ford is, as Indiana Jones, is perhaps my favorite protagonist in an action film because, well, he bleeds quite a bit. He doesn't necessarily want to get into fights, which lends itself to comedy. And he certainly has more of an ethical compass than some guys like James Bond or, you know, I don't know who else, or Rambo, or I have no idea. But he's a reluctant hero, which is also, I think the location shooting was great, the set pieces were great, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. It's tragic to see Shia LaBeouf go. I don't love seeing people get canceled, and Shia LaBeouf is aware of his faults enough to have made Honey Boy, and I think he should have been here. But if not, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is a great replacement. I also think the catharsis of seeing Karen Allen and John Rhys Davies kind of conclude their arcs, they're not conclusion. It's not a conclusion. I mean, I feel like the wedding in the last movie was what you would call a conclusion. This was more just the stars. This was just more a continuation after the conclusion, which is actually very Star Wars too, like Episode 7. It's like, you had this perfect ending. What's next? Well, marriage isn't easy to hold together, but I mean, this is even more of an affirmation that Karen Allen's character and Harrison Ford's character, I mean, why am I even saying that? I know it's Raven and Marion Ravenwood and Indiana Jones are soulmates. So, when you do that, what's next? Well, I would say, speaking of the reluctant hero trope, I saw the Hitchcock film Saboteur. This is the only one I'll list here that I have seen before. When I was a kid, I was not a self-declared or self-proclaimed film enthusiast. I watched a lot of TV, but my parents did have a library of films on VHS, including a lot of Hitchcock for some reason, Gene Kelly and Alec Guinness, and various other stuff. And Hitchcock was a man who knew suspense. He knew, and Saboteur is a film that is the third film I know of. Also, The Wrong Man might have been, where you have a very The Man Who Knew Too Much, along with 39 Steps and North by Northwest, and Saboteur, all follow a reluctant hero trope where a person who gets into a situation he did not sign up for, and he's entrusted with either saving the world or getting himself into humongous trouble, whether it includes life or death or prison or something. And so you don't score points for originality, but you kind of do, because the Saboteur, made in the 1940s, really covers a lot of new territory that the 30s film didn't. And even in hindsight, I see a lot of great stuff about Saboteur that I don't see in North by Northwest. The stars of the film were Bob Cummings and Priscilla Lane, who were not amazing. I'm not going to comment on whether they're good actors. I'll just say that they didn't have the credibility. They weren't prestige. They were B-movie listers. So it's like Anora, where it's like you're making a film, or, just even Titanic, when it came out, like Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio weren't as well known. It's like making a film. It's like making a big budget movie with not great actors in the middle. Avatar's another example, right? Who's Sam Worthington? And I think that maybe made it less famous than North by Northwest. And I think these actors still did a great job with the material. The plot is that in 1940s there is a spy ring that a man who sabotages a factory, he gets confused for another man, and this other man is the innocent Bob Cummings, and Bob Cummings has to clear his name. He, just like Cary Grant in North by Northwest, he actually goes across the country. This is like the hero's journey that George Lucas used very well in Star Wars, only it's more geographical. The hero's journey in filming terms works best when the characters go from location to location and meet the more interesting characters. You have to meet your Obi-Wan, you have to meet your Darth Vader and your Emperor Palpatine, right? And a lot of this stuff happens here as well. What I think is great about Saboteur, more than anything else perhaps, is that it has so many great scenes, so many signature scenes, because Hitchcock, a lot of times his inspiration came from, I want to do a movie with this scene, I want to work this set piece. So there's a lot of great scenes. It's most well known for the end of the film where someone is dangling off the torch of the Statue of Liberty, but there's also so much more. There's a scene where our hero is weaponizing a man's grandchild against him. There's a scene where a man might be helped along by a blind person, but he doesn't know he's blind, and he's trying to suss out whether the man he's talking to is blind. There's a fugitive scene where he jumps, a fugitive-like scene where he jumps from a bridge into a river, and then he tries to pull a fast one up on a cop at the bottom of the river when they're searching for him. There's so much. There's also there's also a scene where him and the leading lady are dancing in this party to try to get away from the crowd, and these people are affably evil. They're very, genteel, and they don't have, and they're like realizing that they just don't want to be anywhere else but dancing with each other in this room. It's very romantic. So I would highly recommend Saboteur. Let's see what else I saw. I saw Barbie. When Barbie first came out, I didn't want to see it. It was caught up in the culture wars. A lot of people who were feminists are like, yeah, Greta Gerwig. They always feel this way about Greta Gerwig, and she's a female director. She wears her. She has a lot of great girl power kind of movies, and she's not the most ardent. I make films just to fight the patriarchy. And when you see her in interviews, she's not like all I hate men or anything like that. She co-wrote I knew that any sort of exaggerations by the right, by the woke right, by the anti-woke crowd, that she was making this film to undermine men and stuff was ridiculous. She co-wrote the film with her husband, who's a great filmmaker, who she supports. She seems like a lovely person. I just didn't want to watch the film mostly because it didn't interest me. It's not like I'm a Barbie doll playing person, and it was all pink, which isn't my favorite color, the color palette of it, and I skipped the Lego movie for this reason, and I wouldn't watch anything that's hyper masculine like G.I. Joe either. I didn't want to watch a movie based on a toy. I ended up watching the movie, and I think that what we can say about the culture wars, it's definitely overblown. It's just a fun movie with great meta commentary. It's a movie with a lot of world building, which means a movie with a lot of world building means that, like, you can probably create a lot of sequels and spin-offs and fan fiction about this stuff, and have fan theories and have deep discussions over how this universe works. She created quite a universe out of this. It's and that's, I love those kinds of movies. It's got a great ensemble. I don't think it necessarily is a film that maybe deserves like acting awards, or even a directing nod, but for a film based on something so flimsy commercially, she did a pretty amazing job. I also watched, I saw a 1988 movie called The Earth Girls Are Easy with, it's interesting because the cast is it's just such an interesting choice of people, put it that way. It stars Jim Carrey, Gina Davis, so it stars Jim Carrey, Gina Davis, Damon Wayans. Those two guys before they were famous. Gina Davis won an Oscar in 1988, the same year she made this movie. For all I know, she could have won a Razzie for this, because it is definitely a very silly movie that you shouldn't take seriously. But this is also the decade of The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, as well as Cocoon, where there was trying to do a lot of comedy, and My Stepmother Married an Alien. So there's a lot of really bizarre movies about aliens that just don't take the phenomenon of aliens very seriously, and people are just like, whatever, aliens just landed in my pool. So these aliens kind of have no concept of what sex is, but at the same time, they're kind of horny and they want to sex up Gina Davis, I guess, or just Earth ladies in general. And the Gina Davis is like her boyfriend, played by Charles Rocket, an SNL alumni who did a really bad job on that show, and 2.5 decades later committed suicide. So that's a really tragic thing. Not to make light on that, but she's kind of thirsty. She's kind of hot for trot, as they say. Hot to trot, I think, is the phrase. So she and her girlfriend, they decide to give these 3 aliens makeovers, which is a very 80s thing to do. Like, this film cannot exist. I feel like this film would not exist if on December 31st, 1989, like, the clock strikes midnight and, like, this film was just ineligible to have been produced. It never would have seen the light of day. But Gina Davis and her girlfriend, they take a night on the town, and they have this sort of unforgettable scene where they're dancing, and then they're, like, getting into dance battles. Very 1980s again. They're getting into dance battles with people, with, like, ordinary people with other guys who want to hit on their woman and stuff. What's also interesting, so what's interesting about this movie is, again, the sort of pre-fame thing from Damon Wayans, Jim Carrey, and Charles Rocket was kind of in no man's land when this movie was made. It's good for him to get a role, because, I didn't want him to die from a gunshot wound. But Charles Rocket and Damon Wayans are coincidentally 2 of the biggest failures in the history of the show. Damon Wayans is the only person to get fired mid-episode. Fortunately, he hosted the show. Jim Carrey actually got rejected from the show in the first half of the 1980s somewhere, when it was run by someone other than Lorne Michaels, and Charles Rocket was primed to be the star of the first new season of Saturday Night Live, like season 6 or 5 or so, when the original cast had all left and they had to start over from scratch. And he quickly kind of didn't live up to that reputation. He even said the F word live on air in a very strange way that could be deliberate. So it's kind of interesting to see all these failures, all these people who at the time were not doing well, kind of really lighting up the screen. I couldn't stay away from it. I was glued to the whole thing. I don't know why. It was great. Let's see what else I watched. I did watch Running with Scissors because I read the book. It's a story about a guy who grew up with a very weird support system. His mother was a brilliant writer, but was mentally incapacitated quite a bit, so he grew up with a very eccentric therapist, or he claims to, that's disputed, and his family of very eccentric kids, and various patients were coming through the house. He had a very inappropriate relationship with an older man. It was not, it was the book. The book is hard to put down. The book is really good, and I'm not even a book reader. The movie, I think it was sort of made just to capitalize on the book. It didn't really, it's hard to capture the psychological state of a kid, I think, in a book, because you need a really good child actor to portray that kind of emotion. It's basically, his emotion was kind of depression and mood swings, and the author of the book didn't even reveal why he would do certain things, like suddenly decide, I don't want to go to school anymore, okay, or whatever, or I want to smoke now, and like the motivations of the specific character weren't really great. It's nice to see Brian Cox, Jill Clayburgh, some of these people, Gwyneth Paltrow. She was kind of around the stage where she was like phoning it in at this point in her career. I also saw The Collector, which is a very dark film from 1965, which stars Samantha Eggar and Terrence Stamp. Pretty much a two-person thing. Terrence Stamp is a guy who kidnaps a woman and locks her in his basement, but it's not so dark that I wouldn't like. It's not like so, because I don't watch dark films. I don't watch like, if a film is so dark, like Heretic or something, or Silence of the Lambs, I don't appreciate it as much, because I don't want to watch a big ball of depression. I mean, I have my limits. It's not like, unless I'm forced to watch it as a critic and have to give a rating, like, dark films do have their place because part of the human experience is darkness, but it's not necessarily something I want to voluntarily dive into unless it's done with a certain underlying artistic statement behind it. And I think The Collector does have that. It's Terrence Stamp and Samantha Eggar were kind of at the height of their careers at this point. One even got an Oscar nomination for it, and I cannot imagine Terrence Stamp didn't get nominations by other awards bodies for this film. You might have known Terrence Stamp. He was in a lot of movies, but he wasn't in any franchises that I know of. Like, his compatriot Christopher Lee was in like Star Wars, James Bond, and Lord of the Rings, and Terrence Stamp, I don't know if he was in anything. I know he was in Last Night in Soho. Both actors tragically passed away this year, but they lived long lives, so I'm very happy to know that. I also saw Walk, Don't Run again, which is a very, very extremely charming film with Cary Grant as an elder person playing matchmaker to the 1960 to two roommates of his, and all three people are crammed in an apartment in 1964 during the 1964 Olympics. This was an era in which films were able to leave the confines of Hollywood and shoot on location. So a lot of films shot in Europe, they shot in Japan, and in this way the character itself, the setting itself of Japan is a character in the film, very much so. It's not a complete love story. It's just a story. It's just a happy story. And Cary Grant can be charming without being the romantic lead, which is, I think, something he at this point he long wanted to prove. He knew that he was older than too many of Hollywood's leading ladies, and this wasn't the era of like Grace and Frankie where people were doing that. This shows the lighter side of Samantha Eggar, who can be very prim and proper. And that romantic chemistry is there. There's also a great running joke over, and you almost forget it. It's that we don't know. So one of the Samantha Eggar's love interest in this case is an Olympian, and we don't know until the very end what he runs. So it is absolutely hilarious. Lastly, I saw several more, but I just arrived at home. So I did see Merrily We Roll Along, which is what Walk, Don't Run is based on. And instead of 1964's Tokyo Olympics, it's based on the post-war housing shortage in the 1940s. This was when a lot of films were very pro-American homespun ideals, and it's a little bit more chaotic than the average early 1940s film. It stars Charles Coburn, who won an Oscar for this, and the excellent Jean Arthur, who you might know from Shane, as well as Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And it's about three people sharing a small apartment. And like Walk, Don't Run, but even more so, it makes more physical comedy out of the very small space, and a love affair develops between two of them. That's also very unlikely, with the older gentleman playing the matchmaker. Charles Coburn's approach to the part is that of a bit more eccentricity. I also enjoy the film because I am from Washington, D.C., and it is interesting to see sort of the take on this city. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in, and remember to give me lots of money at Patreon or whatever, or just follow in any capacity. Have a great day.